All right, welcome back, everybody. We're so excited for this next group. Our next session is going to be a fireside chat. It's called A Look Inside a Utility. I'm going to pass it over to Chris Wiegand. He will be our moderator for this group. Chris, over to you. Please introduce all of your panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Welcome to what I hope will be a fun and memorable discussion, providing a look into the electric utility industry and how it can collaborate with the AI community. My name is Chris Wiegand. I'm a technical executive with EPRI, and I'll be your moderator today. Joining me today are Joel Eline of PPL. PPL Corporation is an energy company headquartered in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It currently delivers electricity to more than 10 million customers in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and the United Kingdom. Also with us, Sheila Mendez of P&M Resources. P&M Resources is an energy holding company based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. P&M Resources provides electricity to approximately 800,000 homes and businesses in New Mexico and Texas. Also, Scott Hickson of Ameren. Ameren is a power company headquartered in St. Louis. Its companies generate a net capacity of nearly 10,200 megawatts of electricity and own more than 7,500 circuit miles of transmission lines. And finally, Joshua Berry of the Tennessee Valley Authority. The Tennessee Valley Authority provides electricity for 150 local power companies serving 10 million people in Tennessee and parts of 6 surrounding states. I'll be asking each of them to say a few things about themselves in a minute, but first, I want to give you an idea of what you're in for today. Now, after the introductions, we're going to have a rapid fire or lightning round session where I will say one word to a selected panelist and then ask them to respond in less than 3 words. Their responses will be based on their experience in the electric utility industry and how they think their company approaches or views the subject word. Following the lightning round, the responses will be shown on a board, and we will dive deeper into the more curious and interesting responses, and the panelists will be able to expand upon or take the discussions into a tangential area. Finally, we'll open the floor and take questions from chat. We look forward to your questions and comments, and any question is fair game. Approximately half of today's discussion will be devoted to this part of the program. Now, let's get back to the introductions. For myself, I've been in the electric utility industry for about 35 years, primarily at generation sites and corporate offices. I think it was probably destiny that I got into the electric utility industry because my generation, and I don't know how much this will translate to our audience today, but my generation, to entertain ourselves, we had board games. And I don't know if today people know what a board game is, but that's how we entertained ourselves. And back in that day, the one, if not the most popular game, was one called Monopoly. And this Monopoly game was based on these properties, real estate that you would buy. Well, one or two of the not as flashy and desirable places were the utilities. There was a waterworks and the electric company. And they were not flashy, they were not the best, but whenever I landed on one, I had to get it and buy it. And the interesting thing about that was in the board game, someone had to land on it for you to then be able to charge them and they would have to pay you. Whereas in real life, in the electric utility industry, each of us, we all have a monthly bill. We always have to pay that one bill. And that was, I bring that up because when I graduated college and I started to work for electric utility, it was very interesting because the company that I went to work for had some of the highest rates in the country. And they were always in the news. Every day there was an article that just lambasted the company, and the local people were so upset. In fact, we were hated. You didn't dare wear a shirt with a company logo on it. And when we moved to the community and we were starting to meet people the first time, they say, well, where do you work? And I would say the company's name, and you would just you would because people were just so upset paying their bills and high bills. I'd never felt so universally hated before as I did at that time. And my wife asked me, she said, "What did you get us into? What is this company you're working for?" But what happened was the reasons for those high electricity rates were investments that the company made. And within 2 years, those investments started paying off. And we went from the highest rates in the country to some of the lowest rates in the country. And once again, so I didn't get the evil eye as much anymore. And I can't tell you that it's a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer where we went from being hated to loved. We weren't loved, but at least at the soccer games, we didn't get such a nasty, evil look. So that's kind of my story getting into the electric utility industry. It's been a very great ride for me. Very happy that I made that decision. And I'd like to hear from our other panelists at this time. So, Joel, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and any kind of anecdote that you may wish to share?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. So my name is Eline. I'm the Director of Business Strategy and Data Analytics at PPL Electric Utilities. I've been with PPL for about 12 years now, many different roles across the organization, and that's actually one of the things that I think makes me, forms my perspective, gives me a little bit more experience or probably a little bit more edge in the data analytics space is actually my breadth of exposure. Probably one of the most interesting things that I've done that fills into my data science, data analytics role was a couple years ago. I was managing our maintenance engineering department, which is responsible basically for maintaining and keeping all of the equipment operational and working across our transmission and substation system. And it was at that time that was struggling with a whole lot of, I'll say, historical problems, things that have been ongoing for a pretty long time. And I was going for my Lean Six Sigma black belt, and that's when I really started understanding how I could use something as simple as statistics to really help form and shape how to improve performance, do things a little bit differently. It was actually at that time that I hired the first statistician of our company, and that was the grassroots start to our data analytics. That organization, just at the right time, needing just the right amount of I'll say, machine learning statistical help to get it going. Since then, it's been a pretty long journey, and that's built up over time, and we're doing a whole lot more different types of work all across the organization between customer service work, storm modeling, lots of assets. That's always been our bread and butter. And at this point, we're even trying to get into some of the other smaller niches in terms of human performance. Probably the thing that stands out the most, at least from an anecdote that made a pretty big impression on me. Like I said, it was a grassroots journey. We started small and we grew and grew until we were really having a pretty big impact on the organization. And throughout the whole time, our COO has always been a pretty big sponsor and proponent of using data analytics in the business, using it to a degree that we haven't ever done it before. And it was actually during two different times that he mentioned. It was a W. Edwards Deming quote: "In God we trust, all others must bring data." And it was at that time that it kind of like really just cemented the perspective of transitioning to a data-driven organization. Running things on gut or just purely on maybe even a little bit of luck, that's not table stakes anymore, and we're a data-driven organization from then on. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Joel. Sheila, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Sheila Mendez, and I am with P&M Resources, which is an investor-owned utility headquartered out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We serve our customers in New Mexico because we are regulated, but in Texas, parts of Texas, we are just a transmission and distribution part of that company. I'm the Director of Operations Technology in the PPMO and Enterprise Architecture. So what that basically means is that my teams are responsible for the technologies that keep the grid up, right, and your beer cold. And we also run all of the technology projects and programs for the company and set the standards in enterprise architecture and how we're moving forward. So I know through the video, I may look like I just got straight out of college, right? All right, all right. I was a Division I collegiate athlete, but to tell you the truth, I'm actually have 30 years experience in technology, and I've been in the energy industry for 22 years. So I got a little bit of background there. I will say that community service is an integral part of my career and in my life, and I serve on multiple boards, including a national board. So most recently, I was a past chairwoman for the New Mexico Technology Council for the last couple of years. So giving back to the community is very, very important to me. Now, my company, even though my teams are responsible for the technology, my company does use my talents also to run profile projects. Like we just entered into the Western Energy Imbalance market here on April 1st, so that was a success. And they also have me run different mergers, acquisitions, right, divestitures, and throughout my career there for 22 years. So when I'm thinking about an antidote is when I first started, the second CEO that I worked for, I always remember his vision, and it was build America's best merchant utility. So we're in a very large growth pattern, right? So we're purchasing whether they're generation assets or new companies out of Texas, retail electric provider, T&D, and et cetera. So that was our growth pattern. And then starting in 2010, our board of directors, or even before that, decided, well, we need to get back to just mainstream electric utility. So we started to divest and divested our gas company, our retail electric provider, et cetera, in Texas. And I ran those. And I remember the last one that I ran in 2012 was one of our last companies in Texas was I kept saying, if we divest any more, it's going to wind up being us. Well, guess what? At the end of this year, we'll be the proud merging over with Avangrid and part of their family. So, haha on me for saying that back in 2012 because it's happening. But thanks for having me on the panel. I look forward to it.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. And next, Scott, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm excited to be talking with everyone today, and hopefully we'll have some great discussion. I'm sure we will. So I am the Grid of the Future and Analytics Solution Manager at Ameren. Ameren is an investor-owned utility. We have operations in Missouri and Illinois primarily. In Missouri, we own generation assets as well as distribution and transmission. In Illinois, we own distribution and transmission. So a little bit about myself. So by education, I'm an engineer. Did my bachelor and master's at University of Missouri, Columbia. And I think one thing that I kind of wanted to hit upon as we think about this week and the purpose of this week is kind of sharing the knowledge and asking questions and making sure people get a lot of value about these discussions that we're taking place in and having right now. So as I think about my career, I started off at University of Missouri in a research lab. So I was the engineer in the room with physicists and data scientists trying to figure out how the stuff that they're building and doing, we can transition more to the engineering side. And while I was working with those people, they were fantastic. I was not the smartest one in the room. I was easily the dumbest one in the room, which was awesome. Every question I had, they took time and care and answered and made sure I understood exactly what we were talking about, exactly what we were working on. It was a fantastic experience. And I'm very happy to say that I had a very similar experience when I transitioned to Ameren. People that took me under their wing and really helped me learn fast and grow very quickly. So on that spirit and on that theme, so today I think we'll have a QA session. So please ask questions and hopefully everybody will learn a great deal as well as myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. That's right on. And last but not least, Joshua, please go ahead.
Hello. Thanks for having me, everyone. I'm Joshua Berry. I think Chris gave me a pretty good intro out of the gate, but just a little bit about myself. I'm the Senior Manager of Data Foundations here at TVA, primarily focused on setting our data strategy, reconciling silos, cleaning our quality up, and really establishing our data enablement framework. That really is me in a nutshell. My background is data management, data integrations, standing up analytics departments, and that kind of led a really good fit into my current role. A funny little anecdote, I know Chris mentioned right up the top that TVA serves 10 million customers. Well, several years ago when I was joining the team, that number was 7.8. So what I tell myself to go to bed at night, feel good after a stressful day, is that I have part of bringing 2.2 million more customers power. So I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Joshua. Very impressive panel. I'm very excited to have all four individuals with us. So let's have some fun and move right into our lightning round. Now, I'm being told that I was breaking up at the introduction. How are things sounding right now? Can you give me a thumbs up, panelists? Okay. So hopefully things are going a little bit good. Thank you, Eric. Well, very good. So let's get into this lightning round. Now, panelists, I will say your name in a single word, and I'll ask you to respond with 3 words or less answer about how your utility feels about that word. So, everybody ready?
Ready?
Okay. Yeah, there we see it. Here we go. Joel, culture.
Drives results.
Drives results. Sheila, vision.
Carbon free.
Carbon free. Scott, future.
Present.
Present. Good. Joshua, mission.
To serve.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that, Joshua.
To serve.
To serve. Thank you. So, Joel, back to you. Innovation.
Commitment.
Sheila, culture.
Accountability.
Scott,
You broke up on me. Could you repeat the word?
I sure can. Sorry about that, Scott. Vision.
Vision, sustainable energy future.
Ah. Joshua, future.
Exciting.
Joel, back to you. Mission.
Top quartile.
Sheila, innovation.
Grid modernization.
Scott, culture.
Care, passion, deliver.
And Joshua, vision.
Innovative.
Innovative. We're almost done. Here we go, Joel. Second to the last round. Joel, future.
Digital transformation.
Sheila, mission.
Renewables.
Scott, innovation.
Constant.
Joshua, culture.
Ingrained.
All right, final round. Joel, vision.
Data driven.
Data driven. Sheila, future.
Electrification.
Scott, mission.
Power, quality, life.
And Joshua, innovation.
Inventive.
Very good. Hannah, were you able to capture all of those? And if you will, bear with us a minute. What we're going to do now is we're capturing all those and we're about to put them up on the screen. And we'll take a look how, looking at the responses for each word by all of the panelists and seeing how they correlate.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
So let's take a look at culture. We see drives for results, accountability, care, passion, deliver, ingrained. All kind of driving towards see an electric utility culture. And I think that's about what I would expect. Does anybody see anything to expand upon on culture? I think it is.
You could probably throw in safety as well, but that kind of rolls into all of them that are there.
Right. Yeah. Safety would be another to add to that list. But I think that's a very good list in describing what makes up electric utility culture. That the drive for results. There's nothing like seeing a crew out there during a storm trying to restore electricity. It's you see it from a nationwide thing when there's hurricanes, sending crews from the north down to help the coastal areas. So if you could put that up, could we keep the board up? Yeah, thank you. So that driving for results and accountability and caring for our customers, because like I said before, everyone is our customer, right? Everyone has that monthly bill, and that is ingrained upon us, and safety as a part of that as well. Let's take a look at vision. So vision, looking out to where we want to go, really very close, I guess, to future. But we see carbon-free, sustainable, energy, innovative, data-driven is that vision that we have right now. Any of the panelists have any additional comment that you would like to make on vision?
I think it's interesting the amount of overlap between vision and future, and how a lot of utilities are more future-minded in their visions than as of right here, right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Joel. And I look at it now, I kind of wish that I had probably just included one of those two, because they are so close. And let's look at that now too with future. With future is the present. I can't remember whose comment was, but I thought that was a very good one. And also exciting, because we're at a time here where the future is really changing with electrification. I think Sheila had said one of her answers was electrification, I thought, but maybe she had said it earlier. Oh, it's right there. Sorry. It's at the bottom. But yeah, that future is really exciting with the topic that we're talking about today, and incorporating that into the electric utility industry. You do see, it's just like Joel said, you see some overlap between those two, but you see some differences as well. Let's take a look at, yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, what I was going to say is just a little expand upon what I meant by present under future. If you think about a lot of things, like Sheila's example of electrification is a fantastic one. All the things that we associate with coming and happening in the future, they're happening right now in smaller pockets. And it's just really a question of scaling and impact. So as we think about DERs, distributed energy resources, they're there, they're connected, it's happening. It's just a question of where they are within the country and their penetration. So when I think about the future, what I was trying to communicate with the word present is stuff's happening now. Things that we're thinking about, 5-year roadmaps, 6-year roadmaps, 10-year roadmaps, everything we're talking about on those timelines, it's all happening right now.
Great.
Yeah,
thanks,
I love
Scott.
that comment too. I love the present comment too. That really hit me when you mentioned that. I think what that did, coming from the foundational data strategy space that I'm trying to aim for, it's like a lot of these things, the longer we put them off, the only harder it's going to be to achieve when we get there. So I really like that one. That one struck me pretty well.
Great. Can we get the board up again, please? Thank you. So let's take a look at mission. What is the mission of our electric utilities? We see to serve, and I think all four panelists would probably agree with that. There's a strong wave in a utility as being served because we affect everyone's lives. It's really an important thing to us. Top quartile, indicating a drive, really going back to the culture with the drive for results. Wanting to be the best, wanting to be in that top quartile. It's interesting too, mission renewables. How impactful renewables and important they are to today's electric utility. And then power, quality, life. Kind of those big three there. And really, you could put an equal sign in there. I forget if that was Scott's answer. I think power, quality, life. But you could put a power equals quality of life in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to have electricity for everything, and the cheaper and more reliable it is, it can improve the life for everybody. And
Go ahead, Sheila.
I was going to say something here real quick, is that when you also think about that, it could also be not just power equals quality in life, it could be power quality, right? Because that's important to us in the utility industry. No matter what kind of technologies we bring in and how much, we have to ensure that the power quality for our customers is still strong, because it is a commodity that everybody needs everywhere for anything else to work, right? If you even think about other utilities, whether it's the gas or water, they all need electricity. So it's one of the foundational elements that we need, but we can't allow our power quality to suffer as we start bringing on more and more technologies and renewables and et cetera. So.
Good point. Yeah, good point, Sheila. Did anybody else have a comment there? I was wondering as well, and what we saw as a part of that in that mission, being able to serve our customers and the concern we have for them. I think that was evident. We saw with the polar vortex in Texas, and I can't remember, Sheila, your company has some customers in Texas, correct?
Yes, we do, and it's a completely deregulated state. Run by ERCOT, so not even connected to the other parts of the grid. So it made it very difficult for them when their generation assets weren't able to perform and to be able to produce the power that was needed. We just have the wires and transmission and distribution, so no generation out in there. But yes, our customers and even our employees were affected by that.
Thank you. And then back to the board, please. So let's look at that the last word, innovation. And this is intended to give you some insight in how electric utility thinks in regards to innovation. So we see a commitment to innovation, I believe, grid innovation, modernization of probably not only our wires, meaning the grid, but also our generating assets, constant and inventive. Any comments, panel, on innovation and what innovation means to you and your utility?
I kind of wish we could have added willing to take risks on there. But that was 4 words and you said 3. But willing to take risks, I think, is a pretty good bullet point underneath that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. My contribution to that one was commitment, and it's very much that. Commit first, and then as you're going, then you figure it out. It's not the inverse of have the answer first and then deploy it. So yeah, it is always the future, the perpetual drive to push the boundary.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I meant by the word constant, is that incremental change and improvements. I mean, you're not going to hit a home run every time. But if you have a high functioning organization, they're going to be able to incorporate new technologies and services quickly and easily into your organization. You're going to be able to make those step changes one on top of the other. And in 5 years, you're going to be really far from where you started.
Terrific. Well, thanks, panelists. Can we get the board up again? I would like to have the board up so that our audience could take a look and see if they have any questions. And at any time, please, panelists, if you have a thought that you want to get across, please just go ahead and speak right up. But at this time, I would like to go to our chat and take questions from our audience. So, Hannah, how are we doing with the questions in chat?
Hey, Chris. I think they should be posted in the back end there for you to read off. Eric, if you don't mind posting those chat questions there.
So, Eric, is the first one at 12:31:55 p.m.? Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I'll take our first question, and I apologize. I failed to mention, if you have a question for a specific panelist, just go ahead and put their name in there before your question, and we'll address it. Our first question is, we are aware of technical screening issues.
Looks like I do have a question. How about your vision about hydrogen economy for the future concerning the decarbonization of the society? Opposed to be the utilities positioning about it?
So let me just, I'll go around, and we're catching our panelists cold with these, but that's okay. Joel, I've started with you every time, and I think I'll move it around a little bit this time. So Sheila, I'm going to put you on the hot spot for this first one here. That was, how about your vision about hydrogen economy for future regarding decarbonization? Do you have any thoughts about the hydrogen?
Yeah, I mean, our company isn't into hydro. We don't have that as one of our resources that we use. But when I'm thinking about that and going forward in the future, water and hydro are just equally important of what we're going to need also just for whether our renewables, our planet, et cetera. So is it part, I think what I read there was about the decarbonization of the society. Well, as we continue to move more with getting away from the fossil fuels, right? Getting away from the ones that cause for us to have emissions in the air. We're looking to be able to see how we can still balance the importance of, again, that power quality I mentioned earlier, and ensuring that we still have enough to serve our base load. And whether that comes from, hopefully not a whole lot of natural gas, but, do more solar, do more wind, if you have nuclear, et cetera. So you have to kind of look at your base footprint of what you're going to need to provide the base load for your customers moving forward. I wish I had more insight into the hydro world. Unfortunately, I do not.
Thank you, Sheila. Scott, any thoughts about the hydrogen economy and your utility?
Yeah, before I start, I'd like to encourage everyone to go to Ameren's website. We have our integrated resource plan there posted in its entirety. Very good read, and we'll have this topic covered there in good detail. With regard to hydrogen, I think we need to have a balanced approach on this as compared to essentially battery storage. These are essentially two competing technologies. Each one has some advantages that the other does not. Hydrogen, it's really good, but the amount of infrastructure needed for it is drastic. I mean, think about the infrastructure that we have for oil. In long term, you would be looking to supplant that with a fully developed hydrogen based economy. So tremendous amounts of investment there. So as you kind of look to compare that to what we'll be able to do with batteries in the more near term, batteries start to look pretty attractive. And I guess when I think about this, I always look at what the car companies are doing. Toyota's a great example. Toyota's putting a lot into hydrogen, but they're also putting a lot into batteries. And I think that's from a utility perspective, you got to have a kind of a balanced approach at this point and keeping your finger on the pulse of both technologies.
Thank you, Scott. Joshua, any thoughts?
Yeah. So currently, right now, it's not a part of our kind of portfolio to any significant degree, but we are exploring new options as we're heading into the future. We're open to many possibilities of how that might enter the conversation, more so than it is currently.
And I know some utilities are looking, especially with the nuclear power plants, they're looking at seeing if they could combine a nuclear power plant with hydrogen production as another means of getting revenue for their sites. Joel, any thoughts before we leave this question?
I would say the only thing I would add, so PPL is a wires company, so we don't own generation assets. And so maybe the vision is probably in perspective to that. Looking back at at other DER and in a more general context, anything that's providing input onto your grid, we always want to make sure that we're operating as reliable as we can. And we've seen things like that already start happening, with voltage and duct curves of how load changes over the day, depending on sun angle or just sun in general. When you're talking solar, so any new technology, it'd be the same game. Can we operate it and provide a reliable service to our customers with hydrogen or with any other alternative energy resource?
Very good. Thanks, Joel, and everybody. We have some questions also along the line. So I'll start, Scott, with you. What is the vision and mission for AI in your plans?
Yeah, I think a good way to think about how to use AI is kind of two approaches. One is you can think of as AI work streams, AI-assisted work streams. So if you think about decisions or processing or reviewing of information that people are having to do right now on a quite manual basis, how can you use AI to supplant that to speed their decision making or make that decisions for them? And then how do you incorporate that into your existing work streams? So that's an important portion or chunk of AI. I kind of section that portion off. Another section to kind of think about with regards to AI is the looking for patterns and signals that you can't detect basically from human perception. So as you start thinking about what problems you'll be able to solve, I think those are kind of two real big distinctions as you think about AI with regard to utilities. Is okay, well, what technology is out there to enable decisions that we can't even make today? And then what technology is out there to basically build out AI-assisted work streams? So I think those are kind of two visions that we'll see impacting our businesses.
Yeah, I think that question goes a lot to what type of problems are you trying to solve as well with AI. Joshua, what would you say? What type of problems do you see using AI for?
Yeah, so for us, it's kind of to what Chris said. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. So right now we have augmented intelligence and artificial intelligence as a part of our data strategy to help us establish a data fabric for dynamic usage to dynamic pipelines. But then there's also very specific use cases that we're aware of that we're trying to hit the ground running on: outage optimization. So they're kind of married in the spirit of what we're doing, but they really are two separate animals that we're trying to tackle.
Very good. A very similar question, Joel. What's the best use case for collaboration among utilities on AI implementation? I guess they're looking for a use case.
Sure. Yeah, honestly, I would think anything having to do with equipment and assets, and I know I actually mentioned that before, and hopefully not coming off as the equipment guy, but what the great thing about equipment as opposed to customers or even environment is that it always has a very typical response, right? What you put into it, you tend to get a very consistent output, and those kinds of things we share a whole lot of similar practices across utilities. I think there's a lot to leverage from one, solving similar problems at the same time, but also using each other's data. What did we do to it over what time? How many did you have? What did it experience? Those kinds of things can actually help the next person as much as just not answering the question for yourself, but the others along the way.
Great. And I think, Sheila, I'm going to throw one at you here. Maybe unfair. We'll see. What is the future for behind the meter AI for demand management? I couldn't think
So
of who is the
behind,
best.
yeah, that's okay. Go ahead and bring it this way because we do own the customer in New Mexico. And so that is something we've been talking about as well. We're starting to use a lot of the AIs now through robotics, automation, and doing, some of those very tedious tasks, and removing the human element out of having to serve or provide that particular service. So those very high demand ones. When we look at how do we get behind the meter, so inside the house, do we start working with other companies like we are with Nest and et cetera to maybe go beyond than just let me take care of your air conditioner, right? How do you start getting more of the smart electronics, especially if they have their own solar and et cetera? How can we start having the AI look at it and saying, hey, on demand, we need this type of energy for you, or hey, can you stop producing right now? Because we need you later on during the peak. So being able to have those triggers so that it can actually start making some of those data decisions on their own without us having to have that information put in front of us and then us making those decisions for them. So it's more those alerts, those automatic triggers, looking to be able to manage any kind of resources that they have, or even curve, right, any of their usage that at the particular time. Don't run your washing machine at this particular time. Don't run your dishwasher, because we have to be able to balance the load in terms of the demand that we have. So, but I think a part of it is that if you don't have AMI yet, that is a big feature that you need to have as part of a critical foundation to have the communication links, whether you use cellular or you use mesh communication or et cetera, in order for you to start having some of those capabilities. And in Texas, we do have AMI. In New Mexico, unfortunately, we're one of the 10% utilities that still do not have that yet. So working towards that going forward for the future. It's part of grid mod.
Well, that's an awesome answer. Thank you, Sheila. And so panelists, I'm going to try to just ask one question as we go through here. If you see in the chat feature a question that particularly hits you that you want to say something about, please don't hesitate to speak up. With that, I'm going to go to you, Scott, with there's been a lot of mention about data-driven and transformation. What are a couple of advanced analytic applications that your utility is or will pursue first?
Yeah, good question. So two use cases that one is currently in flight and another that we'll be working on here shortly. The current one that is already in flight is essentially speech analytics related to our call centers. So why are customers calling? What is it that they need? So then, okay, well, once you get a better grasp of that, then what's the next best action that you can take as that customer calls to better route them to the solution that they need, as opposed to having them scream into the phone, having them push numbers to try and get the solution that they need. So you want that customer to have a good experience, and you want to solve their problem as quickly as possible. So if they're calling you and their power went out 2 minutes ago, okay, well, how can you handle that through your call center to best route that customer to the appropriate solution and let them know that you're working to restore their power and where that stands? So that's a use case that we're currently pursuing. Really exciting stuff. Another one on the grid side that I'm more closely tied with is we're going to be solving, trying to identify connectivity issues with our grid. So knowing the structure and how your grid is connected is foundational for how you operate it. So we're going to be using data from a variety of sensors on our grid, so SCADA information as well as AMI data, and we're going to be identifying where there are errors in the connectivity model of our grid. And that's important for a whole variety of reasons, including the one that I just mentioned, outage communication. So those are two big items that we're working on right now.
I'd like to
All right.
contribute to that one, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Joel.
So very much like Scott at PPL, we have a pretty big customer focus too, and really it's the same kind of thing. Using the transaction between the customer not as data as an exhaust, but data as an asset to really help inform how we could change the customer interaction. Really using like things like Scott mentioned, like natural language processing to get the most amount of value out of that. Maybe something a little bit more specific. In terms of a digital transformation, a good example of how we're layering things together. One of our digital transformation tracks is deploying specific digital relaying, and as an example, so out on like a line relay, and it's pulling back very high frequency waveform data. So you're looking at this as a massive data set, lots and lots of very discrete, minute information about what the relay is seeing. Well, when we combine that back with a use case of basically how do we use analytics to use that data so we can see all the assets that it's looking at to inform maintenance plans, not have to inspect things anymore with physical eyes. You're using the digital devices to do it for you. So you get an immediate benefit from having a better device out there that has out of the box alarming and other functionality like we all kind of use and do. But then you're using the data to get the next level, the next iteration of business value back out of that.
Okay, thanks, Joel. I think, Joshua, I'll go to you next. And we've got a number of questions, so I'm trying to get back to where we were. I think the question to you, Joshua, is what could be the most important factors while predicting load forecast, and what combination of algorithms can be utilized other than time series? Boy, that seems like a pretty...
Yeah. This is a throwback to days of past when I was more deep in the weeds with analytics. But weather, sentiment analysis, you can equate all those things. You can do anon analysis, gradient descent. Like there's different features. You can all go into the depth of exploring load forecasting. There's many ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, it's a tough thing too. I remember a number of years ago there was a time when I think Dallas was almost into brownout situation. It's just the wind stopped in Texas for 45 minutes. And so predicting not only the load, but what's going on with the generation as well is very complicated. Thanks. Thanks, Joshua. How about, so Joel, to you, power quality is often determined more by limits of diagnostic technology than by relevance to consumer or business life impact. How does PQ equal life? Whoa. I'm trying to go back now. That was Scott or maybe I was the one that said equal. But anyway, Joel, you were up to bat.
Sure. Yep. So I would consider that like anything else. It's really about just maximizing your resource. I mean, in this case, it's electricity, and that comes in a bunch of different ways. And whether you're talking about power quality, line losses, even something as simple as reliability. Trying to understand how it's happening, how people are responding to it, and how you can mitigate it is all the crux of what you're trying to battle. Using something like analytics really helps you see past what people tend to do and what they're able to associate with what's making my response act this way. And from that standpoint, so we don't focus as much on power quality. We certainly have limits at PPL that we try and stay within. But we always treat reliability as the first and foremost. And I think if you figure out how to how to tackle one by one as you go through these, you end up with a pretty good program at the end.
Excellent. Thanks. And I see a lot of shaking heads, so I think you nailed it, Joel. Sheila, your turn up. Can you say more about the rapidly growing interdependency between electric delivery and communications?
Sure, and I'm going to assume that comms, they're meaning our total network. So that's the angle I'm going to be taking this at. It's important that we as a utility company have a high availability of all of our communications, right? Now, when you're talking about our electric delivery, we look at utilizing our SCADA to be able to look at the different power and control it, and being able to close the breakers when we need to, and et cetera. Using microwave loops, different types of comms are important to ensure that we have those up and running all the time. So when I think about if we're going to expand like our transmission lines or distribution lines in any locations, we also have to ensure that we're putting the communications that are right for the technologies to be able to handle what we need. As we've all talked about, hey, distributed energy resources, right, DERMS. It is so important as more renewables come online. How are we getting that visibility back into the grid to see how much is coming into and our grid, how much do we need, and how do we start controlling that? And that's where the AI comes into play. We need to have that visibility and to be able to have the technologies to say, well, here are the conditions that we're looking at, whether you're looking at weather conditions, pricing conditions, the load that we currently have right now, the demand, and whether or not we're going to be out of balance. Because like for PNM and New Mexico, we're the balance authority for our area. So we always have to ensure that everything's in balance. So going back to the communications, it's the technologies that go behind it as well. You can't just have the communications set there, but it's all the technologies that work together in bringing it so it becomes a complete intelligent system for us to continue to use. So I mentioned AMI earlier because it has its own communications link, whether, again, if you use mesh or you use, cellular or what have you, there always has to be some linkage in between. So.
Thank you, Sheila. Nailed it, I think. Scott, the next one is to you. What is the role of Edge AI in DER management?
Yeah, this is a great segue from the prior question to this question. So there's going to be limitations on the comm side. So that will exist. So then if you do have communication limitations, what does that distributed energy resource need to be able to know to do in which situations? When should it know how to island itself? How do you handle that inverter? So in order to maintain stability of the grid, you need to be able to have that Edge AI handle some of those aspects, because you're going to encounter instances where your communication is constrained. You won't have the bandwidth, or you just won't have access. It'll be in a really slow area, and that DER is going to have to operate essentially independently and on its own. And I think that's where Edge AI is going to really play a big role, is in those types of situations where you're comm limited, and you also need to make decisions very quickly, because even if it's 30 seconds, your ping time from your central control to that asset, you don't always have 30 milliseconds. 30 milliseconds is relatively low ping. So that's where that Edge AI, I think, will play a big role.
Well, very good. I'm glad you had that question, Scott, and not me. Well, thank you, everybody. And actually, things are looking very good. That was the last question that we have in the chat right now. And I actually we've got about 7.5 minutes left. I have a question that I wanted to ask of you, and then I'll, depending on our time, I think I'll go and ask for any final comments from each of you. But to begin that, and I think, Joshua, you're up to bat, I'd like to ask you if there was a key piece of advice that you could provide to the AI companies listening in today, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'd say I'd say, which something passionate to my heart, don't neglect the foundational aspects of this. Don't neglect the governance aspects of this. And don't tie it just to ethical considerations. Thinking about access, all the stringent scaffolding that has to be in place to really maximize your value of AI. Don't take shortcuts and silos that get you down a hallway that make it a real headache to pull back from and get everything aligned. That would be my advice.
Thank you, Joshua. And Joel, I'll pose the same question to you. What key piece of advice would you give the AI companies? What would it be?
So I would probably break that into two pieces. One is really understanding the business value. And most people talk about the what, but having that perspective of a why can really help answer that question, probably even maybe more easily, but certainly in more in its entirety. And even from our internal process, we spend a lot of time really trying to dig into that why and not just deliver the what or the widget that somebody asked for. The other piece that I would say that's also very important is that complexity isn't always the best. And I mentioned this on a previous call. Sometimes simplicity in motion it gets you the best operation, the best outcome. And I termed it as, we can sit there and we can try and think of great ways to do the most complex, neural network approach to solving a problem, and it's equivalent to, trying to sink a half-court shot, or maybe it's something a little bit more simplistic and we settle for layups. And I don't mean settle in terms of, like it doesn't have great performance, but it doesn't always have to be overbuilt or overdone.
Thank you, Joel. And panelists, my timer is off a little bit. I see that we actually only have about 3 minutes left. So I'm going to go right to any final comments that you might have. And Sheila, please go ahead.
Yeah, I like the fact, asking about advice. And I would say definitely listen more, right? Become a strategic partner with your utility. Help actually look to see what is their problem that they're trying to solve. I like what they just said is like, hey, it doesn't need to be complex. I always think about there's 3 S's and 3 R's that we think about in our company. So it's simple, secure, and standardized, right? And then, of course, reliable, resilient, and redundant. Those part of the AR technologies as they continue to move forward, that's going to be important to us to ensure that, again, we still have the power quality, no degradation of service, that we're starting to be smarter, and because we have our customers that are being very smart and they're wanting a specific service for us to be able to deliver. So become that strategic partner, help us build out what is needed and allow us to be able to partner with you to do that.
Thank you, Sheila. Scott, take us home. Any final words?
I think the panelists before me made some excellent points, and I'd like to reiterate all of those. I think going on a news stream that we haven't mentioned yet, I would encourage all the AI companies on this call to think about what distinguishes your company and what makes you unique in the products and services that you're offering. There is a tremendous amount of AI companies out there that it's a handful of data scientists, and they want to sell you some services. And make sure that the product you have is unique, and to Sheila's points, it's solving the problems that are there. Always be able to communicate how your product is unique and it's going to solve the problems for that specific company.
Thank you, Scott. And I want to say thank you to all the panelists and thank you to the audience for those questions. Great participation. And I just can't say thank you enough. I think that this was a very successful session, and I hope you had some fun with that lightning round, a little bit different. And with that, I'll sign off and say thank you all so much, and please have a safe and productive week. That concludes our session today. Goodbye.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick note. I know we're having some technical difficulties that will hopefully be fixed before the next session, so please be sure to come back and join us at 1:30 Eastern Time. Thank you very much. Off to break.